Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Gerald here with your weather forecast. Hope we're all having a good start to our weekend. It is really beautiful out there for much of us. Here in Charlotte, sun is out, temperatures are in the mid 50s, so a beautiful February day. Couldn't ask for much better. And I'll tell you how long I think that's going to last, but more importantly, we're going to discuss this very impactful storm on the way for next week. And let me tell you, this is going to impact a lot of people with a lot of different things. So you're going to go from heavy snow to ice to severe storms within, honestly, not that far of a stretch across the country. So we're definitely going to talk about that. I'm going to break that down for you. Going to tell you what we know so far and what we don't. And that's going to be the main topic of today's video. So hopefully you enjoy. If you do, don't be scared to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, because again, it's going to be active coming up and I want you to stay informed. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get right into it. I don't want to take up too much of anybody's weekend here. So looking at radar right now, it's pretty clear out there. We do have some showers out here across sections of the southern plains from OKC down to Dallas and even down back towards the San Antonio area, but overall, east of the Mississippi, not really much going on at all except for beautiful, clear skies. And you can see that on satellite right now. There's not a cloud in the sky from Pennsylvania all the way down to Mississippi and back. So really just beautiful weather, really nice compared to all the rain that we've seen over the past couple days or so across much of the East Coast. So taking a look at those hazards, again, not much to talk about. We do have flood warnings still in effect for much of the southeast after all that rain we've had over the past week. So a lot of creeks and streams are out of their banks, especially up here into Kentucky, sections of Tennessee, and back into Virginia, where I've seen multiple videos of flooding out of those areas. But luckily, we should dry up for the next 48 to 72 hours or so before we then get back into that active weather going into the next couple of days. So looking at temperatures out there right now, we have a pretty nice average kind of February day. Temperatures in the 50s for much of us here across the south, 40s here into the Midwest and into the northern Mid-Atlantic, and then of course colder as you get up into New England as well as up into sections of the northern Midwest into Minnesota. But nonetheless, a really nice February day for most of us out there. So taking a look at tonight's low temperatures, it's going to be a bit warmer than last night. Last night was kind of a bit of a shock because it's been so warm recently, and then we kind of got reminded that it is February after all last night. Tonight we do moderate a bit with temperatures really about 5 to 10 degrees warmer than what you saw last night, likely for most of us. Most of those freezing temperatures being confined pretty far up into the northwest as well as into New England. So definitely warmer than last night for sure. Looking at tomorrow's high temperatures, we get right back into that springtime pattern, building back in here across the southeast. You can see as that current high pressure that's over us begins to work offshore, that's going to help to bring that flow in from the Gulf of Mexico, bringing in that warmer Gulf air and that more spring-like weather with it. So, this kind of cold pattern that we're in right now, really, it's not going to last very long. By the time we get into tomorrow, we're already going to be really back above average, and then once we get into the start of next week, we really get back above average. So showing that to you here right now, these are those colder than average temperatures we've been talking about here across the east and especially the southeast. But as we get into really tomorrow afternoon, you can see that really begins to moderate. By the time we're into tomorrow afternoon, we're already back to above average temperatures throughout pretty much the entire east. And then once we get into Monday afternoon, look at these temperatures really begin to overtake everyone really east of the Rockies is above average, and then that will continue into Tuesday afternoon before we begin to set up a bit of a boundary here. I want you to notice this kind of shot of cold air from Canada working its way in, and what that's going to do, combined with this very warm southern air, that's going to lead to quite the storm system tracking in between these two air masses here, and I'll show that to you here in a minute, and that's what's going to lead to that severe weather to the south and winter weather to the north. So this is something we've seen a lot of so far this month, and it looks to continue as we get into the middle of next week. We've got crazy above average temperatures. We're talking near 30 degrees above what you should be this time of the year Wednesday afternoon for a big section of the central eastern part of the country. And then that's going to continue as that storm system begins to develop into the middle of next week and into late next week before eventually this cold air is going to try to fight down the southeast ridge a bit, but honestly, I think the southeast ridge holds on for most of us, at least south of kind of the Mason-Dixon line, if you will, and I really do expect that to continue through the next week or so. So taking a look at this system, I'm going to give you a quick rundown, then we're going to talk about the components of it, why it's happening, where it's happening, and all that fun stuff. But first, let me give you kind of the simple map, which is just the future radar, if you will. So really clear weather from now all the way until about Monday afternoon. We might get a bit of a clipper system to move in here into sections of the Midwest, but I don't expect anything too crazy out of this, especially considering what some of these people are going to be dealing with later in the week. This really won't be that big of a deal. But the weather really begins to get more interesting, I think, once we get into the middle of the week, although Tuesday can't rule out some stray showers here across the southeast as we have a little piece of energy moving through. But really, once we get into Wednesday is when things really heat up. So looking at Wednesday afternoon here on radar, we've got quite a storm system setting up shop here, and it's going to have a lot of snow on the north side, severe storms on the south side, and ice in between, fighting between those two sections. So that's going to be the main story here. And this is going to really get going Wednesday afternoon. Into Wednesday night here, we're going to have winter weather ongoing, probably really from the Atlantic coast all the way back towards the northern plains. This is going to be a very wide system, and I'll explain why that is here in a minute. But I'll just tell you, a lot of people are going to be impacted, and a lot of us are going to see this precipitation last for a while, and that's going to help to really lead to some high totals in terms of some of that winter weather. So moving this ahead, even into Thursday afternoon, we still have this ongoing across the northern tier of the country, and that continues even into Thursday night before, by the time we get into next Friday afternoon, we look to clear out before we get potentially another system next weekend, but we still have some question marks about that we will leave. We're going to leave that off the table for a while. We'll get to that once we get through this first system. So let me explain the setup here a little bit with this pattern that we're dealing with. So right now, and I could actually show you this on satellite, and I meant to, looking on satellite, we have this low pressure out here off the coast of California to the southwest, and what this is going to do is this is going to eventually work here into the southwestern United States, and that's going to combine with another piece of energy diving into the Pacific Northwest, and eventually these two are going to combine, and that's why this is going to be such a large system. So showing that to you here on our models, you can see this is that piece of energy out here out in the Pacific Ocean, I should say. So this is that first piece of energy that's going to dive into the country here, I guess climb into the country really, because it's coming from the south. And you can see that's going to begin to do so as we get into Monday. That really gets into sections of northern Mexico and into the southwestern United States. And then this is eventually going to get here into sections of Texas going into Wednesday, and that's whenever we're going to get that severe weather threat to begin. As this ejects upwards, that's going to combine with this warm sector and cause some severe storms. So you notice on the backside of that, we have this other piece of energy out west. And eventually you'll see here, these two are going to kind of work together. As we get into the middle of next week, you're going to have this first piece of energy. That's going to be producing some precipitation, some severe weather, as well as snow. And then you have this big trough back out west. And eventually when these two kind of interact, you're going to get the shield of precipitation to overlap really the entire northern tier of the country from the Dakotas all the way to Maine. So that's the general setup. And then you can see eventually that trough and all moves out before we get more energy to move into the area next weekend. And we'll talk about that whenever we get there. But to tell you what we're dealing with right now, this is our blend of models, which is just pretty much a bunch of models thrown together. And looking at snowfall totals here, I mean, I'll tell you, somewhere into Minnesota is going to get absolutely clobbered out of this. I'll just tell you. From Minneapolis, I think Minneapolis is a pretty safe bet right now. That general area is going to see a foot of snow to 2 feet of snow. Somewhere in that range, I think is a pretty safe bet. And then that's going to stretch, pretty far over here into Canada and even into sections of the northern New England. I think is also going to see places that pass a foot of snow out of this. So that's the snow potential. We also have the icing potential, though, as I talked about, in between kind of that snow on the north side and that severe weather on the south side. So I think, from Chicago through Detroit back towards sections of Pennsylvania, New York, and then even towards Boston, we could really see a real mixed bag of precipitation with this event. And I think that's the most likely scenario right now in kind of these major cities. So this is printing out 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch of ice, which is plenty of enough to cause problems. And we'll definitely watch the trends on that to see if that uptrends or not. But we also have severe weather to worry about. So with that first piece of energy, since that's going to be working here into Texas and then going up northward again, as that combines with this warm Gulf air to the south, we're going to get an area here in the same part of the country that's been dealing with severe weather for the past month. That this felt like is going to see more severe weather here from Arkansas back towards Baton Rouge, so Little Rock down to Baton Rouge, back towards Jackson, Mississippi in this shaded area, and we're still 5 days away, so we already have some confidence that this is going to occur. And just one way to show you that is the lightning flash density. So the latest models show Wednesday afternoon, those thunderstorms kicking up here over Dallas, Oklahoma City, and then as we get into Wednesday evening and into Thursday, you can see those thunderstorms then continue working over that area that is shaded for having that chance of severe weather. So, I feel pretty confident we're going to get severe weather here in this section of the country, and we're going to get some snow up here into this section of the country. So what that tells me is we got a very dynamic system upcoming this week, and it's going to impact a lot of us from Minneapolis down to the Gulf Coast and then back up towards places like New York City are going to be impacted by this. So it's a lot of people, and a lot of people are going to see a lot of different things. So as we get closer, we're definitely going to be able to iron this out a little bit better. I'll tell you who's going to see how much snow, who's going to see how much severe weather, who's going to see how much ice, and the exact timing. But it looks like the middle of this coming week is really going to be active before, we then get into next week, in which, once again, could be active as well. So we'll definitely watch that. We'll watch the trends. We'll see what we're dealing with, but definitely something you want to stay kind of keeping an eye on, keeping a watch out for, because it is definitely going to be dangerous for some of us. And again, we'll iron that out as we get closer. But with all that said, make sure you enjoy this weekend while we have it, because it is beautiful out there. And I don't want you to get to the middle of this next week and then wondering why you didn't enjoy this week and why we had the nice weather. So hope you all have a great rest of your Saturday, and I will see you all tomorrow for Sunday's video.